Republican Congressman Lauren Boebert is once again taking credit for federal funding for Colorado projects that Boebert actually voted against. Boebert's office sent out a news release bragging about her role in securing funding for projects like highway safety improvements and water reservoir construction in southern Colorado. Boebert requested that funding through the Earmark process, which is when members of Congress add local projects to bigger spending bills. In this case, Boebert's earmarks were part of the government spending bill that passed in early March. Boebert is one of 40 Republicans who obtained earmarks and then voted against the bill. She was out calling it, quote, swamp omnibus bill, and said that it funded Democratic priorities.
Local news journalist Kyle Clark out of Denver called out Congresswoman Lauren Boebert for taking credit for federal funding in her district that she voted against. This move has a name. It's known as vote no, take the dough. And a congressperson, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, can secure the funding themselves, sure, through earmarks. One key purpose of earmarks, officially known as congressionally directed spending, is that they give individual lawmakers a stake in government funding legislation and increase the chances they'll vote for the bill. Now, Bobo isn't special, meaning, well, you know what I meant, but she isn't the only conservative who does this. Altogether, 40 House Republicans have done the same thing this month. Here's another.
Lyndon B. Johnson is very similar to Joe Biden. How are they the same? They're both Democrat socialists. Lyndon B. Johnson was the majority leader in the Senate. Does that sound familiar? He was vice president to Kennedy. Joe was vice president to Obama.
JFK and Obama, famously not the same person.
He was appointed as the president after JFK was assassinated, then he was elected. His big socialist programs were the Great Society. The Great Society were big government programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and welfare, the Office of Economic Opportunity, and big labor and labor unions.
The Office of Economic Opportunity was gutted under Nixon and Reagan, while President Bill Clinton, quote, ended welfare as we know it with the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act of 1996.
Now, LBJ had the Great Society, but Joe Biden had Build Back Better, and he still is working on it. The largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete. Socialism.
So, MTG will go on to talk about debt, homelessness, and the weakening of the American dollar in terms of the world's currency, and how Biden is killing the American dream. Got it. What she failed to mention is how she and her constituents have benefited from Joe Biden's policies. See, in early March, when Marge went in on her own party, she said, Republicans have no excuse for having brought this minibus forward. According to Business Insider, Green listed a litany of grievances, including the fact that the package's 6 bills weren't receiving their own votes, the level of government spending, and the fact that it funds the Department of Justice. However, that included more than $3.8 million for an airport expansion in Floyd County, Georgia, $1.5 million for a water treatment facility in Dade County, and several other projects totaling over $9.3 million. Green gets to have it both ways, voting against the broader bill while having something to brag about to her constituents back home. And Bobo is the same. And we can do the same with conservative male politicians. Journalist Tyler Buchanan caught Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, who campaigned on Biden's reckless spending throughout 2022, but was front and center for Intel's Ohio groundbreaking photo op held early in the event before Biden arrived. Then featured that photo op in a re-elect ad with this headline. So of course, DeWine now champions Biden's spending without naming Biden. Tyler Buchanan doesn't buy nonsense, so he keeps receipts. That's how we do it in Ohio. And evidently, we also tell people to move your business to Ohio, hire workers, see success. Like Representative Jim Jordan did, when even the White House had to step in and say, Honda and LG are adding jobs here in America because of President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which Congressman Jim Jordan voted against. If you're questioning anything about today's topic, it should be, what are we to do with the likes of a Tommy Tuberville, who boast about broadband in Alabama in a tweet without realizing that community notes are going to fact check it. So, believe it or not, ask this Republican analyst what we need to do.
The House Republican majority is a dysfunctional embarrassment. I mean, Speaker Johnson didn't ask for this job. He stepped up when the House couldn't elect a replacement for Kevin McCarthy. He's trying to manage an unmanageable conference. Republicans need to understand that they control one half of one branch of government, and now they're going to control it by one vote. You can't impose your will on the entire government when you have one half of one branch of government with one vote. The way, if you want, I want to cut spending too. I want to do all these things. If you want to do that, there's a simple way to do it: win elections. Don't nominate lunatics. Get people who can actually win a general election, not just a Republican primary. Take back the Senate. Take back the White House. That's how Biden got the spending through. So that's how, if we want to cut the spending, that's how you get to do it. You can't do it by having this internal chaos.
That was Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen after MTG filed a motion to vacate the chair, which means the House will vote on whether to remove Speaker Mike Johnson from the speakership, just like they did with Kevin McCarthy less than 6 months ago. Green's measure came on the heels of the passage of a $1.2 trillion spending bill that Johnson put on the floor. More Democrats voted for the legislation than Republicans. That per media ITE. And Marge can't have the government helping the people she represents though, right? And Republicans know what bills they voted on and how they've helped their people, right?
The money that you talk about, the $40 million that you bring back to the district, sometimes that money comes from bills that you voted against. You voted against the CHIPS Act, and yet you praise the fact that the South Florida Climate Resilience Tech Hub is going to be started in Miami, right? You voted against the infrastructure bill, and you talk about all the money that comes back to the airport. So at the same time that you're taking credit for the money that you bring back to the district, in Washington, you're voting against these projects on party line votes.
Listen, that was, I think, last cycle. I cannot really remember.
So, what's in this $1.2 trillion spending bill that ended repeated government shutdown concerns after months of negotiations? Well,
they managed to find, in the warmth of their hearts, an increase of $27 billion to defense, funded an increase in thousands of new Border Patrol agents and detention beds for immigration and customs enforcement. And yet, despite all those increases, they decided to outright ban any U.S. government funding for UNRWA, the primary source of humanitarian aid in Gaza, until March of 2025, despite the fact that the initial security concerns raised about that organization have been proven shaky at best, an outright lie at most likely.
I don't want to come off as someone who claims that the GOP didn't contribute anything, so...
And let's not forget an absolutely bonkers provision that prohibits State Department facilities from displaying any flags that are not on an approved list, which it turns out was just a backhanded way for conservatives to finally figure out how to ban pride flags from being flown from government buildings. Personally, I'd have preferred the shutdown.
For Really American, I'm Jeff Wiggins. My architect knows Japanese.